Let me say this clearly before we go any further. If you feel empty inside, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are not ungrateful, and you are not alone. What you're experiencing is something I've watched happen to millions of people, quietly, slowly, invisibly. People with jobs, people with families, people who laugh at jokes, show up to work, scroll on their phones, and still go to bed every night with a hollow feeling they can't explain. I'm Dr. Stuart R. Miller, and for decades I've studied the human brain, emotional regulation, and long-term psychological depletion. And I can tell you this, emptiness is not a personality flaw. It's a signal, a biological, neurological, emotional alarm that something fundamental inside you has been neglected for too long. Most people think emptiness comes from failure. It doesn't. Some think it comes from trauma, sometimes, but not always. Others believe it's depression. Sometimes it overlaps, but emptiness is its own condition. Emptiness is what happens when your nervous system has been stuck in survival mode for so long that it forgets how to feel meaning. You're not sad enough to cry. You're not angry enough to scream. You're not motivated enough to chase anything. You're just flat, numb, like life is happening on a screen in front of you instead of inside you. And the scariest part? You can function like this for years while everyone around you thinks you're fine. Here's what nobody tells you. Your brain did not evolve for constant stimulation, constant comparison, constant pressure, constant urgency. It evolved for purpose, connection, rhythm, rest, and contribution. When those things disappear, when your days become repetitive, disconnected, and emotionally sterile, your brain doesn't panic. It shuts down feeling to protect you. Emptiness is not your brain failing. It's your brain conserving energy because it sees no emotional reward worth investing in anymore. I've sat across from CEOs who felt empty, medical professionals who saved lives and felt empty, parents who loved their children deeply and still felt empty. This isn't about gratitude. This isn't about success. This is about meaning starvation. And just like physical starvation, it doesn't kill you all at once. It weakens you slowly. It makes you tired without effort, detached without intention, alive without feeling alive. If you're watching this and thinking, I don't know when it started, that's normal. Emptiness doesn't arrive with a dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, one ignored emotion at a time, one postponed dream, one swallowed sentence. One day you chose be practical over be honest. One year you chose survival over self-expression. And eventually your emotional system learns that feeling doesn't matter, so it stops generating it. This video is not here to scare you, it's here to explain you, to give language to something you've been carrying silently. Because once you understand why emptiness happens, it stops feeling like a personal failure and starts feeling like a solvable condition. But first, you need the truth. And the truth is uncomfortable. Emptiness is not caused by lack of happiness. It's caused by lack of alignment between who you are and how you live. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to explain may be the first time you feel genuinely understood in a long time. Emptiness forms when your inner world has been ignored for so long that it goes quiet, not because there's nothing inside you, but because nothing inside you has been listened to, and the human nervous system is adaptive. When expression is unsafe, pointless, or repeatedly dismissed, the brain learns suppression as a survival strategy, and over time suppression doesn't feel like effort anymore. It feels like nothing, and that nothingness is what you call emptiness, but neurologically it's emotional inhibition, the down-regulation of the limbic system, the slow fading of curiosity, desire, and emotional contrast. And this often begins early when people learn that being useful is more valued than being authentic, that being productive earns approval while being vulnerable creates risk. So the brain rewires itself around performance instead of presence. And years later, you're successful, functional, responsible, but internally vacant because your emotional circuitry has been trained to stay offline unless absolutely necessary. And modern life accelerates this by keeping you constantly stimulated but never fulfilled. Scrolling gives dopamine without meaning. Work gives obligation without purpose. Conversations stay surface level. and your brain never drops into the deeper states where meaning is formed, so days blur together and you stop anticipating the future, not because you're hopeless, but because nothing feels emotionally distinct anymore. And the most dangerous part is that emptiness feels normal after a while. It becomes your baseline, and you forget that life is supposed to feel textured, layered, alive, and instead you think something is wrong with you personally, when in reality your system has been running on emotional low-power mode for years, protecting you from disappointment, rejection, exhaustion, and grief. Because every time you cared deeply and it wasn't met, your brain took notes. Every time you expressed a need and it went unanswered, your brain took notes. Every time you sacrificed something meaningful for practicality, your brain took notes, and eventually it concluded that caring costs more than it gives, so it shut the door gently, quietly, without asking permission. And now you feel empty. Not because you lack emotion, but because your emotions have been stored away behind layers of neurological caution. And this is why quick fixes don't work, why vacations don't help, why entertainment feels hollow, why achievements don't land, because emptiness isn't fatigue, it's disconnection from self, and reconnection is slow because the brain doesn't reopen systems. It closed for safety unless it trusts the environment, and trust takes repetition, honesty, and discomfort. It means allowing yourself to feel small disappointments again, to want things without guarantees, to be present without numbing, to sit with boredom long enough for curiosity to return, because curiosity is the first emotion that comes back online when healing begins. And if you're empty right now, it doesn't mean you've lost yourself. It means you've been surviving intelligently, and the path back isn't about forcing happiness, but about rebuilding internal permission, to feel, to care, to want, to rest, to be imperfect without punishment. And this is slow, quiet work, not dramatic transformation. It starts when you notice moments of mild interest and don't dismiss them, when you allow sadness without immediately distracting yourself, when you tell the truth to yourself even if no one else hears it, because emptiness ends the same way it began. Gradually, one honest moment at a time, and the fact that you're here listening to this means the part of you that feels is already waking up, even if it's faint, even if it's tired, even if it doesn't trust yet, and that's enough to begin. If you're watching this and thinking, I don't know when it started, that's normal. Emptiness doesn't arrive with a dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, one ignored emotion at a time, one postponed dream, one swallowed sentence. One day you chose be practical over be honest. One year you chose survival over self-expression. And eventually your emotional system learns that feeling doesn't matter, so it stops generating it. This video is not here to scare you. It's here to explain you, to give language to something you've been carrying silently. Because once you understand why emptiness happens, it stops feeling like a personal failure and starts feeling like a solvable condition. But first you need the truth, and the truth is uncomfortable. Emptiness is not caused by lack of happiness. It's caused by lack of alignment between who you are and how you live. Stay with me, because what I'm about to explain may be the first time you feel genuinely understood in a long time. Emptiness deepens when your brain realizes that days keep passing, but nothing inside you is being metabolized emotionally. And by that I mean experiences are happening, but they are not being processed into memory, meaning, or identity. Because emotional processing requires stillness, reflection, and safety, three things modern life rarely gives you. So your mind becomes a conveyor belt of moments that never land, conversations that never sink in, achievements that never integrate. And over time, this creates a strange sensation where you know intellectually that time is moving forward, but emotionally it feels frozen, like you've been standing in the same internal room for years while the calendar keeps flipping, and this mismatch between external motion and internal stagnation creates a quiet existential fatigue that doesn't show up on medical tests, doesn't respond to sleep, and doesn't disappear with motivation, because it isn't tiredness of the body, it's tiredness of the self, the part of you that was meant to grow, evolve, and feel altered by life, but instead has been forced into maintenance mode, just keeping things running, just staying acceptable, just staying functional. And the brain rewards functionality far less than authenticity. So even when you do everything right, something still feels wrong, and people often describe this as feeling empty, hollow, or disconnected. But clinically, what's happening is a long-term suppression of emotional salience, the brain's ability to mark experiences as meaningful, and without salience, life feels flat, interchangeable, forgettable, and this is why weeks disappear, why you struggle to remember what you did last month, why memories blur together, because memory formation depends on emotion, and when emotion is muted, time collapses, and suddenly years are gone, not because you were unconscious, but because nothing was allowed to matter enough to leave a mark, and that realization alone can deepen. The emptiness, because once you notice it, you start grieving time you can't get back. Versions of yourself that were postponed indefinitely, conversations you never had, paths you never explored, and grief that isn't expressed turns inward and becomes numbness, because the nervous system cannot sustain unprocessed grief indefinitely. It has to shut something down to survive, and so it shuts down feeling altogether. And people often blame themselves for this, thinking they're lazy, broken, unmotivated, or emotionally cold, when in reality they adapted perfectly to a world that kept asking them to override their inner signals, to ignore intuition, to push through discomfort without resolution, to prioritize stability over truth. And the brain learned that feeling deeply was inefficient, risky, and unrewarded, so it optimized for endurance instead. But endurance without meaning eventually feels like emptiness, because humans are not designed to simply last. They are designed to experience, and when experience becomes repetitive, controlled, and emotionally neutral, the psyche begins to atrophy, not dramatically but quietly, the way unused muscles shrink, and the first muscles to go are wonder, anticipation, and desire, which is why emptiness often comes with a loss of excitement for the future. Not because you don't want a future, but because your brain has learned not to emotionally invest in one since past investments didn't pay off. And this creates a subtle hopelessness that isn't dramatic enough to be recognized as depression, but heavy enough to drain color from everything. And people cope by adding stimulation, more content, more noise, more work, more goals. But stimulation without emotional presence only deepens the problem, because it keeps you distracted from the internal signals trying to come back online. Signals like boredom, sadness, longing, and restlessness, which are not enemies but invitations, invitations to realign, to change, or to feel. And when those invitations are ignored long enough, they stop knocking, and silence takes their place. And silence is what you experience as emptiness, and the longer it lasts, the more foreign genuine feeling becomes. So when moments of emotion do break through, like sudden sadness, irritation, or longing, they feel overwhelming or inconvenient, and the instinct is to shut them down quickly, reinforcing the cycle. And this is why emptiness can coexist with a good life, because externally everything may look stable, while internally nothing is moving. And stability without growth feels like suffocation to the human psyche, even if it's comfortable, even if it's safe, because safety alone is not enough to generate aliveness. And aliveness requires risk, emotional exposure, and choice. Things many people gave up gradually without realizing it. And the return from emptiness does not happen through grand reinvention, but through small acts of internal honesty that slowly convince the brain it is safe to feel again. Acts like admitting dissatisfaction without immediately fixing it, letting yourself want something impractical, staying present with discomfort instead of numbing it, engaging deeply with one person instead of superficially with many, and most importantly, reclaiming agency over attention. Because attention is the gateway to meaning, and where your attention goes repeatedly, your sense of self follows. And if your attention has been scattered across obligations, screens, and expectations for years, yourself will feel diluted, faint, hard to locate. And emptiness is often the feeling of not knowing where you are inside your own life. And rebuilding that sense of location takes time, patience, and gentleness, because the nervous system will test you. It will bring emotions back slowly, cautiously, to see if you will listen this time. And when you do, even briefly, even imperfectly, the emptiness begins to crack, not explosively, but subtly, like warmth returning to a numb limb, uncomfortable at first, then gradually relieving. And this process cannot be rushed, because emptiness was not created quickly. It was built layer by layer through years of adaptation, and it dissolves the same way, layer by layer, through presence, truth, and permission. And the most important thing to understand is this: emptiness is reversible, not because something is missing inside you, but because something was put on hold, and what was put on hold can be invited back, slowly, carefully, honestly. And the moment you stop judging your emptiness as a failure and start understanding it as a message, you take the first real step out of it, because meaning does not return to a nervous system that feels attacked. It returns to one that feels understood, and understanding begins here. If you're watching this and thinking, I don't know when it started, that's normal. Emptiness doesn't arrive with a dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, one ignored emotion at a time, one postponed dream, one swallowed sentence. One day you chose be practical over be honest. One year you chose survival over self-expression. And eventually your emotional system learns that feeling doesn't matter, so it stops generating it. This video is not here to scare you. It's here to explain you, to give language to something you've been carrying silently, because once you understand why emptiness happens, it stops feeling like a personal failure and starts feeling like a solvable condition. But first, you need the truth. And the truth is uncomfortable. Emptiness is not caused by lack of happiness. It's caused by lack of alignment between who you are and how you live. Stay with me, because what I'm about to explain may be the first time you feel genuinely understood in a long time.